Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, so you sent over some really interesting sources this time. They're all about door locks, but really zooming in on rim cylinders and how they fit in with everything else.
Yeah, it's a common bit of hardware, but maybe not something everyone thinks about deeply until they need to, right?
Exactly. So our mission today is to, well, really get under the skin of rim cylinders. What are they? How secure are they really? How do they stack up against, say, a mortise lock? And maybe crucially, could you actually change one yourself?
And the sources are great, a mix of things. Some quick Q&As, a few mini articles going into more detail, and even a website FAQ.
Yeah, that mix should give us a pretty solid, well-rounded view without getting totally bogged down. Okay, ready to unlock this.
Let's do it. It's interesting how they all tackle the same questions, just maybe from a slightly different angle. The quick ones give you the facts fast. The articles explain a bit more the why, and the FAQ kind of anticipates those practical questions you'd have if you were, say, trying to replace one.
Yeah, it shows even something seemingly simple like a door lock as, well, hidden depths.
Definitely.
All right, so let's start right at the beginning. What is a rim cylinder? The name itself isn't immediately obvious, is it?
Not really. Basically, it's the key part of those night latches you often see mounted on the surface of a door, usually the inside.
Okay, the night latch.
So the rim cylinder is that small bit on the outside of the door where you stick your key. Usually round, sometimes oval. It just pokes out a little.
Got it. Yeah, I can picture that little keyhole bit.
Yeah.
Okay, now, if you needed a new one, are they all basically the same? Like, can you just grab any rim cylinder?
No, not quite. That's actually a really important point in the sources. They're not all interchangeable.
Oh, okay.
They can differ in, well, the type of key they use, obviously, but also their physical size. Things like the backplate size matter.
The bit that sits against the door.
Exactly. And even brand compatibility with the night latch itself. So you really have to check the specs if you're replacing one. Make sure it actually fits your existing lock. Oh, and the keyway shape, too. That little slot the key goes into, that can vary. Different shapes mean different keys won't work.
Okay, definitely not one size fits all then. So where do we typically find these things? Where are they most common?
The sources are pretty clear on this. Mainly residential front doors, specifically ones that use a night latch.
Makes sense.
And they particularly mention traditional British front doors. It seems they're very common over there.
Ah, interesting. Okay, so it looks pretty simple from the outside. How does turning the key actually, lock or unlock the door? What's happening inside?
It's actually quite a neat little mechanism. When you put the right key in and turn it, the cylinder rotates.
Right.
And as it rotates, there's a little lever on the back called a cam that also turns. This cam pushes against part of the night latch mechanism inside the door, pulling the latch bolt back.
So the cylinder turning directly retracts the latch. It's not like manually sliding a bolt.
Exactly. The key's action directly controls that latch. Inside the cylinder itself, you've got pins that the key lifts to a specific height, creates a shear line.
Ah, the classic pin tumbler thing.
Yeah, that allows the cylinder core to actually turn and move the cam. Simple, but it works.
Okay, sounds fairly straightforward. Now, for the DIYers among us, the sources seem to suggest changing one isn't like rocket science.
Yeah.
How do you actually do it?
Yeah, generally it's seen as a pretty manageable DIY job. The basic steps are take the cover off the night latch box on the inside of the door.
Okay.
That usually reveals the screws holding the cylinder in place, often just two long screws going right through the door into the back of the cylinder.
Right.
You unscrew those, pull the old cylinder out from the outside, put the new one in, making sure it's lined up properly, and then just screw it all back together, pop the cover back on.
So basic tools like a screwdriver.
Pretty much. Most sources say it's simple. Though, interestingly, one mentioned a common mistake is not tightening those screws enough. Yeah, apparently if they're loose, it can make it easier for someone to trig force the cylinder. So, simple, yes, but you need to tighten it up properly for security.
Good tip. Okay, that sounds doable. But what if, you lose your keys or something goes wrong? Drilling out the cylinder was mentioned. Sounds a bit drastic.
It is, yeah. That's definitely a forced entry method. You drill right through the keyhole, basically destroying the pins inside.
Ouch.
It wrecks the lock, obviously, makes it unusable with a key, but it usually means you can then manually retract the latch or just remove the broken cylinder completely.
A last resort then. And you definitely need a new cylinder afterwards.
Absolutely. No fixing that.
Okay. Let's talk security. Where do these rim locks, rim cylinders, where do they sit on the security scale? Are they top tier, basic, somewhere in between?
The general feeling from the sources is
Yeah.
fair. Decent quality ones, especially those with a deadlocking feature. Deadlocking means you can turn the key further or use a button on the inside to properly secure the latch so it can't just be pushed back easily, like with a credit card trick or something.
Ah, okay. Extra security step.
Right, so those are better, but overall, they're generally considered less secure than a mortise lock.
Okay.
One FAQ pointed out that, yeah, they might stop an opportunist, but someone more determined might know how to bypass them relatively easily compared to other locked types.
So the advice is often to pair them with something else,
What?
like a mortise lock.
Exactly. That's a very common recommendation. Use the rim lock night latch for convenience, but have a mortise lock for, proper security when you leave the house or overnight.
Gotcha. That actually brings up a point.
Yeah.
Rim lock versus rim deadlock. Are those different?
Yes, definitely. A standard rim lock often just has that automatic spring latch, slams shut and locks. A rim deadlock has a bolt you have to manually through with the key, both to lock and unlock.
Ah, so it's a proper bolt, not just a spring latch.
More deliberate.
Much more deliberate and generally stronger, yeah. Okay. Now, we keep mentioning mortise locks as being, well, generally better security-wise. Let's nail down that comparison. What's the fundamental difference? How they're fitted?
Yeah, the biggest difference is installation. Rim locks, as we said, screw onto the surface of the door. The main body is on the inside face.
Right, surface mounted.
A mortise lock is fitted into a pocket or mortise cut into the edge of the door.
Ah, so it's embedded within the door itself.
Exactly. The lock body sits inside the door's thickness. This inherently makes it stronger and harder to attack because the lock mechanism is protected by the door structure.
That makes sense. Whereas the rim lock body is more exposed on the surface.
Right. Rim locks are easier to fit. Generally, you don't need to chisel out that big pocket in the door edge, but the mortise offers that extra strength.
Okay. And within mortise locks, there are mortise cylinders. How do they differ from the rim cylinders we started with? Still a cylinder, right?
Still a cylinder, yeah, but designed differently for how it fits. A mortise cylinder usually screws directly into the mortise lock body that's inside the door.
Okay, screws into the hidden lock case.
Whereas a rim cylinder, remember, uses those long bolts that go through the door to connect to the surface-mounted night latch.
Different attachment methods for different lock types.
Got it. So if I'm just looking at my closed front door, what are the visual clues? How can I tell if I have a mortise lock versus just a rim lock night latch setup?
Good question. The main thing to look for is the edge of the door. A mortise lock will usually have quite a large rectangular metal plate, the faceplate set flush into the edge.
Okay, on the side edge.
Yeah, you won't see that with just a rim lock.
Yep.
Also, mortise locks often have a separate handle or knob plus the keyhole, and you might just sense that there's a more substantial lock mechanism inside the door's thickness, rather than just sitting on the surface.
Right, the rim cylinder just looks like that small round or oval thing on the face of the door.
Exactly. Much less hardware visible on the edge.
Interesting. Now, one source touched on history said mortise locks were maybe more common residentially way back when, before the 50s. Yeah, that was mentioned. They're still very much used today, of course, especially for higher security. But apparently, pre-1950s, they were perhaps more standard in houses.
So what changed?
Well, the suggestion is that as door designs maybe got a bit thinner sometimes and mass production techniques took off, simpler to install locks like rim locks and later other cylinder types became more popular for volume house building.
Ah, ease of installation became a bigger factor.
Seems like it played a part. But mortise locks certainly didn't disappear. They remained the go-to for robust security.
Okay, so not replaced, just options expanded. Now, zooming back out slightly, we know rim cylinders aren't all the same, but what about all door cylinders? Are they generally interchangeable?
Oh, definitely not. The sources really stress this. Cylinders vary hugely. Size, obviously. Profile shape, you've got rim like we discussed, but also Euro cylinders.
The ones you see in UPVC doors a lot.
Exactly those. And oval cylinders too, plus different key systems, different security levels inside them.
So you can't just swap a Euro cylinder for a rim cylinder, for instance.
Nope. Completely different fittings, even within the same type like Euro cylinders. They come in loads of different lengths. You have to measure really carefully.
And measurement is key then.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we said you can often change a rim cylinder yourself. Does that hold true for these other types, like Euro cylinders?
Generally, yes. For the common ones like standard rim and Euro cylinders, DIY replacement is often quite possible. Usually just involves removing a retaining screw, sliding the old one out, sliding the new one in.
Seems simple enough.
It often is, but If you've got a high security model or if you're just not comfortable doing it, the advice is always clear. Call a locksmith.
Right. Better safe than sorry, especially with locks.
Absolutely. They'll make sure you get the right type, the right size, and that it's fitted correctly so it actually provides the security it's supposed to.
And are locksmiths pretty much able to handle any kind of cylinder swap or upgrade?
Yeah, that's their bread and butter. They deal with all types: rim, euro, oval, high security, standard. They can replace like for like or advise you on upgrading to something more secure and get it installed quickly and properly.
Good to know that expert help is there. Okay, the practical bit, cost. If you do need a replacement, what sort of money are we talking? Ballpark?
The sources give a range, typically around 60 pounds to 150 pounds.
Okay, what makes it vary?
Few things. The type of cylinder is a big one. A basic rim cylinder will be cheaper than, say, a high-security anti-snap Euro cylinder.
Makes sense.
And then, of course, whether you do it yourself or pay for a locksmith's time and labor, that obviously adds to the cost.
Right, so 60 pounds, 150 pounds covers parts and maybe labor, depending. Okay, last big question then. How do you figure out exactly which cylinder you need? Sounds like there's a bit to consider.
Yeah, first step is identify the type you have now. Is it rim, Euro, oval? Look at it carefully.
Okay, type first.
Then, size is critical. Especially for Euro cylinders, you need to measure the length accurately. And then think about security level. Do you want just a basic replacement or something tougher?
And there are standards for that.
Yes. The sources mention looking for security certifications like BS 3621 in the UK. That means it's been tested and meets a certain standard against attack.
BS 3621. Okay, something specific to look for if you want better security. So, check the type, measure carefully, consider the security level you need.
That's pretty much it. A bit of homework before you buy.
Okay, brilliant. Well, that feels like a pretty comprehensive tour through the world of rim cylinders and how they fit into the bigger lock picture.
Yeah, it's really interesting how much detail there is when you start digging into something you see every day, from the basic function to the security nuances and replacement practicalities.
Absolutely. So just to wrap up the key points for you. Rim cylinders, very common, used with those surface night latches, offering convenience and, well, a fair level of security for many homes.
But definitely different from mortise locks, which are fitted inside the door and generally offer higher security. Understanding that difference is important.
Crucial, yeah. And while swapping a rim cylinder can often be a DIY job, don't hesitate to call a locksmith if you're unsure or want an upgrade. Knowing the right type and size is vital.
It's that mix, isn't it? Seemingly simple device, but lots of variations and things to consider for security.
Indeed. And maybe here's a final thought for you to chew on. Given that rim cylinders are so common and often relatively easy to change, how often do you think people actually do upgrade them? Especially to ones with better security ratings, like that BS 3621 standard.
Good question. Probably less often than security advice would suggest.
Maybe. And what does that mean for overall home security in the long run, as burglary techniques perhaps evolve? It's definitely something worth pondering when you look at your own front door. Anyway, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.